afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session. So, I know some of you were there in the previous session, which we had done. Actually, that was lockdown 1.0, and now today we are in, I don't know which lockdown. What we're going to do is I'm going to do a very quick recap of some of the key metrics that we had discussed. Because one of the things which is very important in a cash constraint, and as Mr. Devesh Agarwal said, we are likely to have these issues for the next year or so. So one of the most important things is we have to take decisions very fast. Now, if you have to take decisions, how do you do that with approximate data, especially when the market conditions are so uncertain? I'm going to quickly recap some of the basics that we did last time, and then we will talk about specific constraints. What should you do if you have a constraint in orders? What should you do if you have a constraint in supply? And then I'm also going to talk about, of course, the main topic, which is cash constraint. And I'm also going to define cash constraint in slightly technical terms, the way we look at it in theory of constraints. But what I would really like is, if we can actually use some of these tools to address some of the dilemmas that some of you are facing. So I'll try to, close in about 45-50 minutes so that we can have some time for Q&A, and I can actually show you some live examples of how we apply this. I hope that will be okay with everyone. Are you able to see my screen now? Prithvi, are you able to see the screen now?
Not it.
Not it, ma'am.
Sorry? Because I'm getting a message that app is sharing a window. GoToMeeting is sharing a window. So I don't know what else to do.
It is still showing loading Gilani screen on the screen. Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'll try loading it one more time. I think it might just take a few seconds, though I had no issues connecting when we tried a few minutes ago. So those of you who were in the previous session, if some of you can respond, and you can respond by sharing in the chat window, what is the goal of the company as per the definition that we had in the previous session? Can anyone respond?
Is it make more money?
Make
Sorry?
more and more money.
Perfect. 4M. Yes, so we said that the goal of the company is to make money, and not just make money. If we make some profit this year and if we make the same amount of profit next year, we will not be happy. So it is to make more and more money, and the way you can remember it is through 4M. 4M stands for make, more, and more money. Okay, now what are the measurements? And anyone can respond to this, whether you attended the previous session or not. So what are the measurements for the goal? How do we know if we are making more money? What metrics do we look at? Anybody can respond, whether you attended the previous session or not. If you're a business owner, how do you know you made profit? Okay, so somebody said turnover and profit. Mr. Sanjeev ji, is that Sanjeev Marathe? Yeah, you said free cash. Bank balance increasing. Thank you, Prakash. What else? One more important parameter.
Lesser inventory.
Liquidity and assets. Sorry, did you say something, Prithvi? Good orders in hand. No, orders in hand and making money is not the same thing. We'll talk about it a little later today. Ever increasing cash, positive balance sheet, profit. One more, I'm looking for a specific term, financial term. If there is anybody from finance background, so I've got two financial terms, profit and free cash flow. There's one more. Okay, I'll explain this. Let's say you work for some company or you are the owner of a company and you made some profit last year. Now Reliance Industries, owned by Mukesh Ambani, also made the same profit last year. Yes, so I've got the answer. Return on investment. If Reliance and our company made the same profit last year, then we have better return on investment because I am assuming the capital employed in your business is much less than what Reliance Industries as a whole has invested. So I am looking for, so these three are good financial parameters: profit, free cash flow, return on investment. I see many other things that have come, sales, being debt free, positive balance sheet, dividends. Some of them may be good measures, some of them may not be good measures. But if you have to be sure, if your sales is growing year after year, you cannot be sure that you are making more money. So sales is definitely not a good parameter. Assets increasing doesn't tell me anything. As long as the return is not increasing, it doesn't tell me. So while there may be other metrics also that are important, but if a company is doing well on these three parameters, if period after period the profit is increasing, return on investment is increasing, and free cash flow is increasing, the company is, we can say with reasonable confidence that the company is making more money, which means that it is meeting its goal period after period. Okay, I am going to try sharing my screen one more time. Let's hope it works. Okay. Please tell me that you can see this. Prithvi, I'm not able to see the chat window, so if you can just tell me looking at your screen and just speak into the mic.
Yeah, once again. Chat box you can see.
I can't see now that I've made this
I was not
slide.
able to see the chat box. Let me try once again.
Yeah. The slides, are you able to see now?
No, slide chat box is gone and even a slide is not coming. Let me try once again. No.
Okay, so I think we should just wait for a few seconds. Whatever I'm talking about right now does not need the slides. So on my computer, I have shared the screen. Please let me know when it comes. Then I'll move the slides. But till then, we will continue our discussion forward on, we said the goal of the company is making more and more money. Okay, and we also said that the financial measurements for the goal are profit, return on investment, and free cash flow. Now, one might say that these measurements are good, but as an average employee, how do I understand or how do I help the people in my company understand the impact of their actions on these metrics? And that is something that I completely accept. While these are good financial measurements, on an operational parameter level, we need some other measurements also. So there are three measurements that we look at in theory of constraints, and we covered this last time. So some of you may remember. Uh, you can share in the chat window. What are the three good operational metrics that we talked about? Yeah. Any responses, Prithvi? If you don't mind, can you read out for me?
Yeah. From Arun, it is profit, free cash flow, and ROI.
Yeah, so these are financial parameters. I'm saying, but as an average employee, I can't say that if I take this action, if I hire this person, how will the profit go up? It's probably not very easy to say. So are there some operational metrics that we can have? And those who have attended the previous session would be able to answer this. What are the 3 operational parameters that I gave you?
Dinesh has said as less working capital, capacity utilization.
Okay, so less
And
working
Wilfred
capital is
talks
sort of
about,
there, so that's not. Mhm.
and Wilfred says gross profit, lower inventory, lower operational expenses.
Okay. Okay, so I'll tell you for those of you who attended and those who missed the previous session, the recording is available on YouTube. If you request Prithvi or Rupa, they'll be able to share the link with you. So we talked about 3 measurements. We called them throughput, we called them investment and operating expenses. So throughput we refer to as the contribution. The so-called, so let's say if I make a sale of 10, okay, and the underlying material cost for that sale is 6 units. So how much contribution have we made? 4 units. So that is what we refer to as throughput in theory of constraints. What we are saying is that the goal of the company is to make money. So throughput is the rate at which you make money. You don't make money when you produce. You don't make money till the material is dispatched. Okay, so that is a slightly different distinction from looking at contribution or looking at product cost. So we call it throughput. Throughput is the contribution over a period of time. Again, just to give you a very simple example, so if this bottle is the product that I'm selling, if I'm selling this for 10 rupees and the material cost of the plastic involved in the bottle is 6 rupees, then on each unit that I sell, I generate 6 rupees. 6 rupees, 4 rupees. 4 rupees is the throughput or contribution. Okay, the second metric that we talked about is investment. Investment refers to the money stuck in the system. It is my money, but it is not available with me for use. So investment refers to money which is blocked in plant and machinery, in land, any kind of assets, money in receivables, inventory.
This.
Sorry? Okay. And the third metric that we talked about is operating expenses. Operating expenses refers to all those expenses which will be there whether we sell or not, whether we produce or not. I am deliberately not calling these fixed expenses and variable expenses because typically the way variable expenses or COGS is calculated, there are a lot of allocations, there is a lot of transfer pricing involved in that. So I don't want to look at any of that. I am simply looking at the material cost on one hand, we call it truly variable cost. So throughput is sales minus truly variable cost. All these formulae are there in the slides. It was there in the previous session also. I am just doing a little recap. And once you're able to see the screen, I'll show you some examples, or I will, if you're not able to see the screen, I'll show you some examples on Excel. Okay, so we said there are 3 financial metrics and there are also 3 operational metrics: throughput, investment, and operating expenses. Okay. I'll just try this one more time. Are you able to see it now? I've tried one more time. Prithvi, I think I will log out and then log in again.
Yeah, that will be good.
That will be better because I don't want to
Yeah,
waste
better.
everyone's time.
Yes.
I'll also email the presentation to you in case it doesn't work out. Somebody has suggested that's a good idea. So I'll just log out and come back again.
Please.
Yeah, can I have the screen sharing option, please? Yeah, Nandita, please give me the screen sharing option. Okay. Meanwhile, while this happens, I'll move forward. So we talked about these metrics. I'll show you some examples on screen or on Excel. We will also be emailing the slides to you. So in case we have any issues, you will still get all the material. Okay, so after these metrics, after we discussed these metrics last time, we also talked about the 5 focusing steps in TOC. In fact, if you remember, I had added a step 0 to that and said the first step is to know the goal and its measurements. And that's the reason why we are spending time on this, because any action that we take, it is very important to have this financial literacy and understand how do my actions impact the overall system performance. Yes, Prithvi, can you give me the screen share option?
We can
Okay.
see the screen, ma'am.
Yeah, we
Okay,
can
great.
see now. We can see.
I think this is Prithvi's screen, if I'm not.
Oh, really? I don't know.
Yeah,
No,
so
no, I
Prithvi,
think
just move this, a couple of slides forward, please. Then you'll have to help me with that. Yeah, next slide.
That is the best. Yeah.
Yeah, next one. Can we have the next one? Yeah, so yeah, just wait here. So we said investment is we said is the money tied up in the organization, which includes the inventory in raw material, WIP, finished goods. Okay, money blocked in plant and machinery is also a part of I. Receivables are also a part of I. And there was a very simple example which I used last time, and a lot of people appreciated it. Is let's say I live in a big bungalow. Okay, it's worth several crores, but I don't have money to pay the milk vendor. That means that money is there. I do have those assets on my balance sheet. I own a big house, but I don't have cash to pay my milk vendor. So that's the reason this part about investment is very important, and especially in times like today when we hear about big companies like Hero and JCB talking about not paying their vendor due to cash crunch. These are companies that have been making profits for years together, and today they don't have reserves for a few months. So that is something, especially for business owners and key decision makers amongst you all, please see, we should never spread our resources so thin that in case something goes wrong, any disturbance in the environment, we come to a situation where we don't know where will we pay our salaries from, we don't know where will we pay our small vendors from, we don't know how to pay for insurance, rent, medical coverage, so many of those things. Okay, so we can go to the next slide now, Prithvi. Yeah, and the third thing I said is operating expense, which should be fairly clear to all of you. So operating expenses are those expenses that I will have whether I produce one unit or not, whether I sell one more unit or not. Okay, I hope everybody is able to see the screen now.
Yes, we can see.
And yeah, can we have the next slide?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Can we have the next slide? Okay, now we also said that there is a link between these financial measures that we talked about, profit, ROI, free cash flow, and the metrics that we talk about. I mean, ultimately, the goal of the company is not to improve throughput. Goal of the company is not to reduce investment alone. It is done with respect to what is the goal of the company? Please type. What do we want to do? We want to make more and more money. We want to increase 4M. So there is a definite link between these. And this is where, when we talk about decision making, this is where these links are important. Profit is throughput minus operating expenses. ROI is P by I, which is profit by investment. So profit is the so-called return that we have generated, and investment is the money which is stuck in the system. And the next point is free cash flow, which is profit minus delta I. What does delta I mean? So let's say during a period we made a profit of 10 units, okay, or we made a profit of 10 rupees. But during that period, our inventories and receivables went up by 6 units. So how much money will be deposited in the bank? 4 units. So free cash flow is the money which is actually available. I mean, in simple terms, cash in the bank. It is the money which is, it is not just profit on paper, but the money which has actually come in our hands. Okay, can we have the next slide, please? Okay. Yeah, so we talked about these 5 focusing steps of TOC, and as I mentioned, I also gave you a step 0. Now, before we go further, I just want to explain the terminology of constraint in theory of constraints. Now, many times people say that, yeah, today, now it is the time of constraints. We have a lot of constraints and, we don't know what to do. And, we solve one constraint, another constraint pops up. So the only point that I want to make is that constraints and obstacles are different. You may have a lot of you may have a lot of obstacles, but you will have only one constraint. The way we define constraint in TOC is, it is that one thing which prevents you from achieving more of your goal units. I'll give you a very, very simple example. Let's say from my home to my office, the distance is 20 kilometers. Okay, and on a normal day in a pre-COVID world, it used to take me 1 hour to reach my office. So with what speed did I travel? 20 kilometers per hour is the speed with which I travel to my office. Okay, now when I go to office on a Sunday morning, then there is no traffic. I reach the office in half an hour. So with what speed did I travel? 40 kilometers per hour. So in the first case, it took me 1 hour to cover 20 kilometers. So 20 kilometers per hour. Why was I so slow? Because of the traffic. So the constraint on a weekday, on a Monday morning, is traffic. When I go to office on a Sunday, at the same time, everything else same, but there is no traffic on a Sunday morning on Bangalore roads, I reach in half an hour. So the speed with which I traveled is 40 kilometers per hour. So what is it that prevented me from going faster on a Sunday? So today, what is the constraint? On Monday, the constraint was traffic. Today, the constraint is traffic rules. I still have to stop on the traffic signals. I am not Narendra Modi that when I come, I don't have to stop at any traffic signals. And then we of course know about what beautiful roads we have in Bangalore, that even if you do have an opportunity to go a little faster, you just can't, because of the potholes and the construction work, or the rain or something or the other happening. Now let's say by some magic I have got this VIP pass, because of which I don't have to stop at any traffic signal. There is no traffic. There are no potholes on the road. Now I cover this 20 kilometers in 15 minutes. So what is the speed with which I have traveled? 80 kilometers per hour. So today, what is it that constrained me from going faster? So the constraint is changing. On day one, the constraint was traffic. If the traffic would reduce a little, my speed would become more. So on Sunday, there was no traffic. The constraint was traffic signals or the road conditions. Now that has also changed. So today, what will prevent me from going faster is my own driving speed. Now my own driving speed, my driving capability, or the capability of my car has become a constraint. So when I talk about constraint in theory of constraints, I am talking about the one thing. Like a chain will always, in fact, the analogy that we often use is that of a chain. That a chain, the output of the chain, the strength of a chain will be determined by its weakest link. So the same way we are saying that in an organization, what is preventing me from making more and more money? That one thing will be my constraint. Yes, we can improve marketing. Yes, we can improve so many other areas. We can improve our documentation. There's so much that is possible. But what is that one thing? If you had to change only one thing, which will give you maximum bang for the buck, which will give you maximum return, that is your constraint. If you don't focus on the constraint and improve something else, will it increase your output? Will it increase your money making capability? No, it will not help. So for the organization as a whole, we have to look at where is our constraint. So these are 5 focusing steps of TOC. If I'm not going to spend more time on this because this was covered in the previous webinar, but if any of you need any material, I'm going to share my email ID at the end. I will share more information with you. So there are 5 steps. The first step is to identify the constraint. Second is exploit the constraint, which means get more out of it, get the maximum possible from that constraint. The third is a little subtle, subordinate all policies, decisions, and procedures to exploiting the constraint. And just to help you understand subordinate, I'm going to use a very simple example, which is that of a surgeon in a hospital. When a surgery happens, is the paramedic, the patients, are they there in the operating theater first, or the surgeon is there first? The paramedic and the patients are ready. So they have subordinated. They have subordinated the whole process to optimize the constraints time. The constraint in this case is the surgeon. So constraint is not a negative word. Constraint, in fact, if you look at the hospital, it is your most precious resource. So please don't look at constraint as something which is a weak link. It is something which has less capacity as compared to the others, and it could be your most precious resource as well. Okay, so if you identify, you exploit, you subordinate, that itself will give you a lot of output from the system constraint and help you make more money. If after that you need more of that resource, it could be a machine, it could be manpower, it could be more customer orders, then you find a way to elevate the constraint. Elevate typically means that if you need more output from the constraint, you get more. So if there is a machine that is a constraint, you get one more machine. The only caveat is that don't do this too soon. Unless you have done step 1, step 2, step 3, please don't put more money to get a new machine, to get new people in design, to get more salespeople, to even expand to other geographies. Have we first got enough from Bangalore, from Karnataka, from South India, before we talk about, we are also expanding to the Middle East, or we are also expanding to Europe? If you have business there, by all means, go ahead. But I'm just saying, make sure that before you try to elevate, before you try to invest in something new, it could be new technology, new market, make sure you are getting enough from the current system. Okay, and step 5 is avoid inertia, which means that after doing some of these things, if the constraint has changed, then you may need to change your policies and procedures accordingly. So let's say today my constraint is in operations. So what is the guideline that I have given to the team? Please keep on producing. You should not be idle for even 1 minute. Now tomorrow, if my constraint is not operations, I have less orders in hand, then my factory can produce. If I still tell them to keep producing, what will happen? Please answer. Please write in the chat box. I have less orders in hand than the production capacity. If I still keep on producing, what will happen? Inventory, yeah. So I can see some answers. Inventory will increase. Absolutely correct. So that is what it means. That's in very simple terms. That is what inertia means. That if the constraint shifts, you need to change your behavior accordingly. Okay. Can we go to the next slide? So now today a lot of people are saying that they have a constraint in orders. So so first question, in case you feel in your company, and it may be correct, whether you are an owner or a production head or a sales and marketing head, if you believe you have a constraint in order, my first question is, do you measure your on time in full? On time in full refers to your delivery performance as per the customer due date, not as per what production has committed, as per their production planning schedule, as per the way the customer wanted the orders. So let's say the customer wanted 3 orders. Order 1 is A 10 units, order 2 is B 20 units, order C is C 30 units. The customer wanted all of them on 14th July. So did all of them go exactly as per that schedule yesterday? And what I'm also saying is I also want to make sure not that they're not just on time, they're also in full. So you sent exactly 10 units of A, you sent exactly 20 units of B and 30 units of C. You need to have a very stringent parameter for on-time delivery, and I will tell you why. Most companies we see in India do not measure on-time delivery. Even if they measure, it is usually based on production plan. The production people say, yeah, as per our commitment we have done. But I am talking about a very stringent measurement where I'm saying as per what the customer wanted. I'll come to some of these aspects about what the customer wants also, but as per the dispatch date, and you will be surprised, many times people say no, we don't measure, but we are usually 80-90% on time. When we actually look at the data as per the date which was advised by the customer and confirmed by the sales and marketing team, and look at the dispatch, it is usually less than 50%. 50% is a good number. Many companies we find they have no idea, and the number turns out to be in single digits. Okay, so here is my question now. If you are saying that you have a constraint in orders, then it means by design you have more capacity in operations. Then shouldn't each of your orders be 100% on time? Okay, please think about it. You have some customer orders, you have some material, you have production capacity. Shouldn't each and every one of your orders be 100% on time? Now, you could say, so I'm not saying that you have a constraint in operations, but you may have a constraint in planning, which is preventing you from delivering every single order 100% on time. So what I want to tell you is that just by focusing, the first thing that companies need to do is start measuring OTIF very strictly, very religiously, not just something which is there in a parameter or in a report of 50 parameters. but measure it very stringently and focus on it. We do have solutions in theory of constraints that help in lead time reduction, but today that is not the topic of discussion. But if any of you haven't, need more information on that, I will be happy to share it with you. But there are very simple prioritization and focusing techniques that can help you help you meet your on-time delivery. You don't need anything. You don't need to change anything big time. Just starting to focus on time in full can help you increase your on-time delivery significantly. Okay, can we have the next slide? Okay, and I also want to show you, this is an actual example of a company. The moment they started focusing on-time delivery, within 1 year, they were able to increase sales by 35%. Typically, 30 to 40% is what we see, companies that focus on OTIF without adding any resources, they are able to increase their on-time in full performance by 30 to 40, their sales. On-time in full goes to close to 100%, automatically your sales will go up by 30 to 40%. So I'm just showing you the numbers of how this turned around the company. The sales increased from 100 to 135. Totally variable cost was, in their case, was 65%. So for every 100, so if they sold something for 100 rupees, the material cost for that was 65 rupees. So as the sales went up to 135, you will see here the totally variable cost went up from 65 to 88. So the throughput, again, the contribution, if you remember, which is my sales minus TVC, went up from 35 to 47. Now let's look at what happened to operating expenses. Operating expenses in this case went up marginally by 2 crores. Maybe they added some small machinery, some manpower here and there. I don't remember, this was a long time ago, what they actually did. Many times companies are actually able to increase on-time delivery and sales without a single penny. So in this case, I just wanted to bring this example to your attention. Their operating expenses went up from 25 to 27, and the profit. Now look at the profit. In the first case, the profit was 35 was the contribution. Out of that, 25 went in covering the operating expenses, so the profit was 10. In the second case, the profit actually went up from 10 to 20. So the 47 was the throughput, 27 were the operating expenses, so the profit actually doubled. You can look at these numbers, you can just as an exercise try it out for your own company. If you increase your sales by 30% without adding any of your resources, you will see that your profit will go up by 2 to 3 times. If you are near break even, it could be even more, it could even be 5 to 6 times. So please do check it out. In most of our clients for TOC implementations across the country last 20 years or 20 odd years, the one differentiator for on-time delivery for increasing sales has been on-time delivery. I am not a sales and marketing person. I'm not going to give you any gyan on how to change your positioning, brand. All of those things also work. I'm not saying that they do not work, but this is something that we have experienced without adding any resources. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. Now we talked about if your on-time delivery is less than 100% or less than 90%. Now let's say you say, yes, we do have a constraint in orders. We are delivering 100% on time, or I'll give you benefit of doubt and say if you're at least delivering 95% on time. It's possible that once in a while we had a quality issue, we had a design issue. So I'm saying if you have greater than 95% on-time delivery, how do you get more orders? Okay, so the first thing that I think that we need to do, and it's not just for salespeople, this is equally relevant for owners. This is also relevant for those of you who are operation heads and you're actually, meeting these you're actually performing at such a high level. Please have this conversation with the top management, or if you have access to the customer. Okay, please try and get answers to these questions which you see on this slide. Do the customers recognize that your OTIF performance is better than your competitors? First, you are saying it is 100%. Does the customer also agree? Okay, now the customer agrees that yes, you are doing 100%, you are doing 95%, customer is happy. Ask the customer, are other competitors doing the same thing? Please get that, and you can do it through formal channels, you can do it through informal channels. My question is, if we are providing something to the customers that others are not, shouldn't we get a larger share of the customer's wallet? Shouldn't we get higher prices from them? Yes, I know you might say that our customer is not willing to give us a higher price right now. But look at it this way. There is supply chain, there is disruption in the supply chain. Very few people are able to meet deliveries as per the committed schedule. If you are doing something better than your competitors, and you can get the customer to pay you for it, it can help you run your operations, because you are also an important part of the customer's ecosystem. If your company is not doing well, their supply chain will also be disrupted. So tell them that if if I don't get a higher price, I will not be able to run my operations the same way, I will not be able to meet the same quality. So please don't look at it as something where you're holding them ransom. If this is something that you need to do, if you need higher prices to run your operations, do not be shy to ask that to the customer, provided you are giving him something which competitors are not. Don't take this advice as, if you are not delivering on time, you take my advice and ask for a higher price and lose orders. That will be a lose-lose situation for you and the customer. This is only when you have superior delivery performance. I will give you some more examples. You don't have to take these actions from tomorrow, but these are important things for all of you to think about. Think about, even if you are not in marketing, sales, even if you're not the owner of the company. Okay, so the next question is, let's say you are saying that yes, we are delivering. Customer also acknowledges that we are delivering, but he's not really willing to give me a higher price for it. Okay, so then I'm going to ask you, are you so reliable that you could give a penalty clause wherein you say that if we are late by 1 day, we will give you this much off? And I'm not talking about a very small penalty. I'm talking about a significantly high penalty, and I will show you some examples where we are actually saying that if we are 7 days late, we will give it to you for free. Can I have the next slide? Okay, so this is a company. You can actually check it out on Google. I have taken it from the web only. I do not know this company. This company is not a client. So this is a company called Bedford Reinforced Plastics, based in America. Look at their delivery guarantee. Just have a look. If they are late by 7 days, they will give the order free. Do you think a company like this will have dearth of orders? Okay, do you think you could be do you think you have the capability to give a guarantee like this today, or you could create it in a few months if you really try? We have no intention of paying the penalty, by the way. This is just our own confidence on how reliable we are. So delivery reliability could be a competitive advantage. Okay, can I have the next slide? Okay, now this example that I have put here, this is from a client of ours. The company's name is Paharpur 3P. They are in flexi packaging. So, the sort of the wrappers of biscuits that you see, or the pouch, the Vim pouch, or what is the ketchup pouch that you see. So they make this flexi packaging. And they actually, developed this capability. So they this company was actually making losses for almost 11 years till 2005 when we started TOC implementation there, and within 3 months they turned around, and the only thing that they focused on was on time delivery. That's the first thing that they did, and in about an year they were able to bring their on time delivery to about 95%. And now for the last 14 years or so they have been increasing their profit year after year, and this is their guarantee now. They say no minimum order quantity, we will give you one piece if you want. And they have also given a delivery guarantee similar to what I showed you: 30% discount for 1 day delay, 10% for each additional day, and if it's greater than 7 days, then the customer need not pay them. The customer will get the material, but they don't need to pay them. So please, these are thoughts for you to think about. All I can say is that in our experience, the best way for companies to get new orders has been through on-time delivery. Yeah. So somebody said this is a good strategy if you have good delivery and production team. Absolutely. And I'm also saying that if you do not have it, please work on it. You have to decide what strategy you want to go for. So if this is a strategy that you want to go for, you need to have a plan in place. Okay. So this is on orders. I'm just going to summarize this in the next slide, and the slides will be available with you later. Can I have the next slide? Okay, so you can take a picture of the slide if you want to. Here are my suggestions. If you feel that you have a constraint in orders, please first start measuring OTIF. Try to bring OTIF to 100%. You don't need to do any rocket science for that. You just need to have a simple prioritization mechanism. If you focus on it, it will improve. Whatever gets measured gets improved. So to improve OTIF, my first suggestion is just start measuring it. You start measuring it, some changes will come. Okay, if OTIF is 100%, please check what else can we provide the customer faster. I have written here you can think about it. If you have more production capacity than orders, then can you do more batches? Can you do smaller batches for the customer? No costs will go up. If you have more production capacity and you do multiple smaller batches, no costs will go up because as it is, you have additional production capacity. If you don't run those machines, you are not going to save any costs. Okay, this is something for you to think about. This is a little counterintuitive from what you may have practiced, but please see if there is something. There is something that the customer must value. Otherwise, why is he doing business with us? Okay. Also, like I said, you can look at increasing prices. If you think at a time like this, customer will not increase prices, you can definitely at least ask for better payment terms. If you are giving a credit of 60 days, please bring it down to 30 days, bring it down to 45 days. Ask for payments on cash or LC. I mean, if you are giving them something which others are not, then you have to be able to also demand better terms from them. And I'll tell you two reasons why this is very important today, getting payment fast. One reason for that is, unfortunately, after whatever we are going to, looking at the global ramifications of the COVID-19 crisis, there are many companies that will shut down, that will go out of business. These need not necessarily be small companies or MSMEs. They could be big companies. They could be companies of scale of GE, which have declared bankruptcy in the past. I mean, if you remember General Motors in 2008. So there could be companies of this size also that may end up declaring bankruptcy. So if you have huge receivables with them, the chances of them recovering that money become low. So for that reason, this is a time to increase. This is a time to collect money faster, even if it means even if it means you have to get it at a cash discount. because we don't know whether 3 months later, 6 months later, these companies will be there or not. The other reason is because the demand has come down. I do appreciate that you may have to look at different markets. You may have to look at export markets. Nothing wrong with that. You can absolutely do that. But anytime you try to go to a different market and unknown territory, there may be additional working capital requirements. So let's say if you are a pharma companies today actually don't have dearth of orders, but I'm just saying for the sake of it. If I have to go to a new country, I may have to have new compliances. I may have to generate new reports. I may have to provide them more data. Anything that involves money. If I have to produce some batches of medicines to do these stability studies on, and all of that requires money. So which means that while I'm trying to increase sales, which will add to profit eventually, till I actually generate a return, till I actually get that profit, my working capital requirements are going to go up. So while increasing sales, don't be in a rush to get sales from anywhere. Also look at the cash to cash cycle time. Also work out the increased working capital requirements. I'm going to very quickly show you an example which is there on the next slide, and you can also have a look at it a little later when you receive the slides. Next slide, please. So this is an example actually from an article. The link also is provided to the article. You can read the whole article. This is an article that I had written for Outlook Business Magazine a few years ago. And we are trying to show here the impact of increasing sales on working capital. So you will see here that while net sales increases by 10%, currently the company had a sale of 100 crores per month. Now we have simply increased the sale per month by 10%, 10 crores. So not a very big number. And eventually it will increase our profit by 28 crores. But the working capital requirement has gone up by 30 crores. Okay, you can see the sales, you can see the inventory turns. So automatically for a sale of 1200 and inventory turns, working capital turns of 4, the working capital requirement was 300. Now the working capital has gone up to 330 crores. Now before I go for this strategy, I have to make sure that that 30 crores is financed, because from profit I will get 30 crores only after 13 months. So till then, how will I finance the working capital? Okay, so this is a very what should I say? This example is not a theoretical example that happens in companies all over. While trying to increase sales, companies actually run out of working capital. They actually exceed their working capital requirements. So please have a look at this. And you can also see, I will share the link to the article. You can read the article to understand the logic behind it a little better. Yeah, next slide. Okay, now let's talk about the other thing, which is supply chain disruptions. And you will, again, if you are in production, if you are in purchase, if you're running a company, you will be faced with a lot of discussions on, you will be faced with a lot of decisions on supply chain. And the framework that we talked about initially, throughput, investment, operating expenses, can actually help you manage your supply chain a lot better. Okay, so few guidelines here. I'm not, again, like I said, there is a complete solution for managing supply chain in TOC, but I don't think you need to look at that. A few guidelines are that don't purchase based on forecast, purchase based on actual consumption. Even in your company, you actually need to replicate the model of the way we get milk at home. So if our daily consumption of milk at home is about 1.5 liter, so one day we will get 2 liters, we will have something in reserve, and then on a daily basis, based on the consumption, we will get 1.5 liters every day. At home, we will not get one month's milk because we are getting a quantity discount. discount. In organizations, of course, we go for efficiency. We get something from China, we get something from Vietnam. So this is a time, and I'm not saying this out of the fact that we want to boycott China. I mean, you have to take what works for you, what your values are. I'm not talking about it from that perspective. But local sourcing will make a lot of sense because you will be able to, your money will get blocked for a lesser amount of time. Okay, so even if you don't have a lot of demand today, please figure out what are the local sources. If your teams don't have enough to work on, if they're working from home, they are not able to contribute in many ways, please ask them to find out alternate local sources for each of the items that you're purchasing. I mean, if there's one action point that you'd like to take away from this session, please do that. Please go and check or ask your teams to check more about local sources. And like I said, product mix can change over the next few years. So don't stock out for long periods. Don't buy material because we are getting it at a cheap rate. So let's buy for 6 months altogether. The product mix can really change in the next 6 to 12 months. It is a very real possibility that some of your buyers, some of your key customers may not be in existence after a while. So what are you going to do with that material? Okay, so don't purchase large volumes for quantity discount, and also look at if you can renegotiate minimum order quantities and payment terms with vendors. You may not, if you have small vendors, don't try to reduce their prices, but if you want something for them, ask them to give you better payment terms. So if they were giving you a credit of 30 days, ask them to give you a credit of 60 days. But please honor that, because if they don't survive, you will also not survive. So the entire supply chain will get disrupted. Okay, I have an example here which I'll just share very quickly, and the slides will be available for all of you to see later. So next slide. Okay, so this is the data that is provided to you. The current sales is 100. The raw material cost or totally variable cost, what we refer to as TVC, is 60% of this. So TVC is 60% as a material, as a percentage of sales. Operating expenses 35, so the company is making a profit of 5. Now, a customer has requested us to expedite their order and deliver in 6 weeks. If we can deliver this order, we can get additional sales of 15% or 15 lakhs. Okay, we do have the production capacity available. Now, next slide. So if we were to take this order and produce this 15 lakhs, it will not affect any other order. Okay. Now here is the question. The order requires an imported raw material X that has a lead time of 12 weeks. There is a supplier in India that stocks raw material X. However, it is available at 50% higher price. Raw material X is 10% of the total raw material required in this order. Okay, now here is the question. Now this is the data available to you. Now you have to tell me, should we accept this order or not? Please write in the chat window. Should we accept this order? Okay, I see one response. Yes. Anybody else? Okay, I see a couple of yeses. Anybody who feels that we should not accept this order? So Sanjeev Marathe ji, he has written no harm in paying more. So what he is saying is that there is no harm in paying more for the small item, provided we are able to sell it at a higher price. So let's have a look. Now, while many of you have said this based on your intuition, based on your experience, I want to use the framework that we have used to look at this. So what I want to look at is the incremental increase in throughput or gross contribution, and if I don't see any incremental increase in OE. So all we need to see is what will be the incremental increase in sales, so delta sales, and what will be the incremental increase in TVC. How much will the raw material cost go up? Okay, so can I have the next slide? Okay, so we said total raw material cost is 60 for a sale of 100. The raw material cost was 60. This raw material X was 10% of 60. So in a sale of 100, 6 was the material cost involved. Now at 50% higher price, it will become 9, right? 6 becomes 9 because I'm paying 50% more. Therefore, the new TVC becomes 60 minus 6 plus 9, so 63%. So for the additional raw material that we are going to procure, the TVC is going to be 63% for the additional 15% sales. So 63% of 15 lakh is, it's, what is it, 9.45 lakhs. Next slide. Correct. So we looked at the incremental sales, we looked at the incremental raw material cost, and we got the incremental throughput that we could earn. So when I see this number of 5.55, I know that it's a good number. I know that it's not going to harm anything. The only my suggestion to you is, if you are faced with any similar orders, please try and use this framework to see if it makes sense to do this or not. You will be surprised. You may find that if you go by a product cost route, in some cases the answer would be don't accept. But if you try this route, you will actually be able to get this incremental contribution. So this is not just for supply chain decisions. This could also be in case you are looking at getting some more people at a higher cost. Any expense, anytime money is going out, please see how is it impacting my throughput, how is it impacting my investment, how is it impacting my operating expenses, and use that to decide. If we have time, I can take a couple of questions if anybody of you would like to share some dilemmas. So just a couple of more points on this. The other thing that I want you to make sure is that this incremental throughput number that you have, or the incremental sales versus incremental cost, incremental raw material cost, make sure that there is a significant margin. Because if you end up having quality issues, it should not happen that we took an order in rush and we actually ended up burning our fingers. So make sure that when you take an order like this, you have a sufficient safety cushion. Let's say in this case, even if we have a little bit of rejection, at least we get 4 to 5 lakhs out of it. It should not happen that we end up paying from our pocket. Okay, so that is the same thing on the other side also. While you assumed in the beginning that production capability was there, people were there, just make sure that those things are in place. We don't want to take an order in rush and actually delay on it. We will not be setting a good example with the customer in that case. Okay, so this is on like I said, this is not just for managing supply chain. You can look at this for different decisions, but specifically with respect to supply chain, I do understand that there will be a lot of disruptions right now. Some of you may be deciding not to purchase from China, which is absolutely the right thing to do. So please check out these things. And also, if you are supplying to OEMs, so let's say if you are supplying to a company like Boeing that has got nominated vendors, please check with them if you can use some alternate vendors. That's very important, because all of this talk of boycott China will come to an absolute zero if we continue supplying to OEMs in the same way that we have been doing earlier. So because of the COVID-19 crisis, you can go to those big companies, like if you are supplying to a Boeing or a Cobham, and actually ask them that, look, can you give me an alternate source? I want to buy from your nominated supplier, but it's very, very difficult. So look at developing those local sources. It is very important for the cash to cash cycle time. It is not because it is not because it's not just because of being Atmanirbhar that I'm saying that. I'm saying this because it will be good for your cash to cash cycle time. Okay. Very quickly, one last concept that I want to cover. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So, like I mentioned in the beginning, a cash constraint is when you have sufficient orders, when you have sufficient capacity, but you do not have the right materials available as vendors are demanding upfront payment. Okay, and I'm going to give you a metric that can help you take decisions in a cash constraint. Next slide. Okay, so let's say the sales is 100 and the totally variable cost is 50. Now, first we need to look at, so what I'm trying to see is simply like, when we put money in an FD, we look at the rate of return, right? So I'm trying to look at it for your business, that if I put in 50 rupees today and I get 100 rupees after 2 months, what is the rate at which I am generating money? That is called cash velocity. This is a metric that you can look at if you have a cash constraint as per the definition that was provided to you. Okay, now in this case, look at the cash to cash cycle time. Inventory is 2.5 months, receivables is 1 month. So 3.5 months of inventories and receivable. And I will subtract payables, right? Because that's the money that I owe to my suppliers. So 3.5 minus 1.5. So 2 months is my cash to cash cycle time. So today, if I put in 50 rupees and I get 100 rupees after 2 months, what is the rate with which I have generated money? Look, just remember the compound interest formula that we did in 7th or 8th standard. Next slide, please. Yeah. Yeah, you can just bring it down, bring down the whole slide. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, so just keep it here. Okay. So in this case, if I don't get threatened by this formula, this is simply sales by TVC to the power 1 by n minus 1, which is simply the compound interest formula, principal by amount to the power 1 by n minus 1. Okay, we are looking at the rate at which we are generating money. In this case, this will be, I have chosen simple numbers because this is basically 100 by 50 is nothing but 2. 2 to the power 1 by 2 is under root of 2, which is 1.414 minus 1. So 41% is the rate with which we are generating money. Okay, why is this cash velocity important in a cash constraint? Because it will help you, having this figure will help you evaluate if you are getting funds at a higher interest rate, should you take them or not. Even if you are getting at a very high rate, almost double of what the banks are offering, you can actually take it and generate money. Because what happens in a cash constraint is an upward spiral can take place. So you get this 50 rupees, you generate 100, you make a sale of 100, then you put that 100 back in and generate a sale of 200, so on so forth. 200 becomes 400, because we are saying we have the operations capacity, we have the orders. The only thing that we need is liquidity in the system. So cash velocity can actually help you evaluate if you are getting funds at higher rates. You don't just have to look at banks. If banks are not giving you loans, you can look at so many other sources, NBFC companies, working capital loans. You can even go to friends and family. You can ask customers for advances. Okay, so we are trying to look at this, that even if you take money at a high rate of interest, you will be able to generate a greater return and put that money into the system and create an upward spiral. You can also look at other ways of getting money. So some of these could be through giving cash discount to your customers. So where you actually give them maybe 2% lower price, but instead of getting your money in after 45 days or 60 days, you get it immediately. You could also look at if you have any claims or receivables that have been in dispute for a very long time, you can actually look at settling them at a steep discount, though it may not be what you think is worth. But what will happen is, let's say there is some 10 crores which has been in dispute for last 5 years or so. If you settle on it today you may not get 10 crores, you may get 8 crores, you may get 7 crores. But what you can do with that 7 crores is, if you have a high cash velocity, in 2 or 3 months, that 7 crores will become 10 crores. Okay, so this cash velocity formula, don't get too impressed by it, don't get too threatened by it. Understand the principle and use it in your decision making. You will find it very useful. Next slide. Okay, and like I mentioned, normally cash velocity is in excess of 10% per month for most cash constrained organizations. So it may make sense to borrow money at a high rate of interest, but make sure that that money will generate the return after 2 or 3 months. If you get that money and you don't really have orders in hand, you have got money at the higher rate also, but you will not be able to generate returns. Okay, and then I was just summarized some of the other points that we talked about, which is look at reducing cash to cash cycle time. Before you try to increase sales, please reduce the cash to cash cycle time. Next 12 months, it doesn't matter if sales does not increase, as long as we are able to get our money stuck in the system out. That is of utmost importance. So that's all from me. I'll be happy to take a couple of questions if we have time. Yeah, and Prithvi, you can circulate the slides to everyone, and I'll just type my email ID here in case any of you need any information. Please feel free to write to me.
Sure, we'll share the slide.
Yeah. Okay, Prithvi, any questions?
Yeah, I'm just seeing that. There's a question from Mr. Sanjeev to tell us your thoughts on Atmanirbhar. Is it worth?
Okay, so see, my thoughts on this are irrelevant because I'm not the one who makes purchases, especially but anyway, since you have asked, and we do work a lot in the supply chain area. See, when this whole Atmanirbhar thing started, all the WhatsApp groups, everybody said, we will not buy phones. I will not buy a Chinese phone. I will not order anything Chinese from Amazon. This is what was happening in the apartment WhatsApp groups and family WhatsApp groups. But what I was thinking was, all of my clients, all of them are so dependent on Chinese for their sourcing that even if as consumers we try to do it, it's really not going to work. And that's the reason I made that point which I did about many of OEMs, many of the MNCs demanding that we purchase from particular vendors. So the reason I am saying we should go for local sourcing is because I think it makes sense for us financially. Why should we be dependent on China for small intermediates, plastics, very, very simple things which don't require technology, which don't require a high level of technology. And, so if you, I think last month, some of you may have attended, I was in conversation with Vinita Bali, the ex-MD of Britannia. And she said, we have been saying we should make in India, make in India. Now is not the time to say it. Now is the time to do it. So personally, I feel that yes, and now I am also saying from a political perspective, yes, we should reduce our dependence on China because what has happened in the last few months is unacceptable. And from a supply chain perspective also, that I feel that yes, we need to do this, But we also need to talk to our customers and make sure that they see the benefits in this. Today, when I talk to a company like, be it a Unilever or Mahindra and Mahindra, the supply chain is spread all over so much that if I need to make change to anything, it's virtually impossible. So I think we also need to do that. We need to constantly talk to our customers and tell them, because ultimately the finances will matter. So we have to see how can we do this in a way which is cost efficient, which makes sense for them.
Thanks, Hira. Is there any questions the participants would like to post or ask the speaker?
This is Prakash. I think if I can ask a question, maybe
Yeah.
it's for benefit of all. This usually the minimum order quantity is one thing which is quite famous or quite well known. But in these situations, what's your advice on both for buyer and seller on how to deal with this minimum order quantity?
Okay, I'll talk from, my answer is similar for both, but I'll talk from a buyer perspective first. So let's say the supplier says that, if you buy 100 units, I will sell at 100 rupees. I will not sell for less than that. Now, here is my question. If you are the person who is purchasing, let's say I'm talking to a purchase person, I'm going to ask him this. If I pay 100 rupees, I'm willing to pay 100 rupees. Will he give me 1 unit? I just want 1 unit. Okay. Now I am saying that I'm willing to pay 100 times per unit price. Will he give me 1 unit? Physically, it is possible for him to give me 1 unit. First, I need to establish that. What I find the purchase people saying is that no, no, no. I mean, nothing, no matter what happens on this earth, this guy will only give me 100 units. Okay. So, first, I need to get clarity on this. If I pay him 100 times premium, will he give me at least 1 unit? I'm not saying that you give 100 times premium, but yes, if you do need to compensate them in some way, you need to have that discussion. Maybe I'll give a 1% premium and ask him to reduce the minimum order quantity from 100 to 90. And Prakash, I'll tell you what we have experienced across companies is that there is a sense of saying, why do these people want to do this? So really the issue is that till the purchase, not just the purchase people or operation people, the first point is that we need to see why will it, people would only want to do something if it's going to benefit them. If they don't have that understanding of cash to cash cycle time, why will they do it? Second, purchase people are always measured, and you would have heard this in my previous sessions also. Purchase people are always measured on what is the lowest cost they are getting. So obviously they will get the lowest cost in MOQ if they go for MOQ, if they go for volume discounts. So till we change their measurement to saying that you also have to look at the inventory, you also have to look at the cash stuck in the system, they will not be willing to do it. There is definitely a lot of hesitation in saying, no, the supplier will not agree, no, this vendor will not agree. But I mean, honestly, we work across all sizes of companies, and whether there is a small vendor, they will say, "Arey, bahut chota vendor hai, wo nahi manega," or they will say, "Oh, this is a vendor in Finland. We can't even talk to them." So either way, I think the real problem is that the understanding, the financial literacy is not provided to them, and you can't really blame the purchase people, because I think beyond the CEO, CFO, most people in the company do not have an understanding of this. So, that is my answer. You can deal with MOQs through a lot of. You can have, if you communicate, if you have dialogue with your suppliers, but you will also have to give them something in return, which could be, again, it could be higher prices, it could be credit terms, whatever it is that they need. Just one very quick suggestion is, if you are a cash rich company and your vendor is a small guy, please see how you can support him in this at this time. Maybe you can tell them to give you a cash discount, or don't give you a cash discount, not adhere to MOQs, but you will give them their money upfront. So you can look at win-win in this way.
Yeah, thanks, sir. Thanks a lot. That's a very nice.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Devarajan would like to add something, sir?
I think it's always nice to hear POC which helps the company. And I find the way of explanation of the capital adequacy, total cost, definitely need to learn. Because many times we feel in many companies that we look very short term. But in terms of application of POC, like what Ira mentioned, extremely useful. And one major point, I think, for all of us is how we can support our suppliers now. As definitely in terms of to be win-win for both OEMs and for the suppliers. Not only in a commercial point is how we look from the customer point of view. Especially on changing the source. It's very important that we get approval from OEMs that to change the source at the early stage itself. So it's going to be a challenging combination of all the things. I think combination of competence, combination of application of techniques, and combination of the tools will help us to get over the situation. But things are improving in terms of the business and in terms of definitely in terms of the demand coming back. Hopefully with good monsoons and with all the learnings we had in the last 2 weeks or 2 months, we should be able to get back into quick normal, definitely in a V shape by December. It's a real requirement for the industry as such. I think I should thank Ira for even last time's presentation was outstanding. And this time also the way of simplicity, the way of explanation. Really thank on behalf of BCIC the explanation of Ira, and always you've been an excellent coach for all of us in terms of POC. Thank you very much, Ira, on this particular area.
Thank you.
I also request Indushekar to kindly sum it up, sir.
Yeah, Indushekar.
Yes,
Over to you, sir.
thank you, Prithvi. Thank you, Devarajan San, Prakash San, and Ira San. Wonderful presentation. And I just kept wondering, we've been talking as finance as the, what do you call, the engine for business growth. Many companies put finance as a strategy. Okay. Now, but in reality, I've always experienced, like, let's say I work with my own finance colleague, getting very, very stuck to the fundamentals of whatever costing or accounting, etc. But I think the more deeper you go through, it really means where all the issues are and what can be done, either at supply chain, either at sales, either at operations. I think fantastic the way you have given the insight. Okay.
Thank you.
On behalf of the entire manufacturing panel, the BCIC president, Prithvi, Devarajan, Prakash, and by myself, thank you for taking us through. Both the webinars were simply outstanding. Thank you very much,
so
ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. With this, we can close the webinar. Thank you, Prithvi and Nandita.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Take care and have a peaceful evening. Bye.
Thank you, sir. And also, we will ensure that the presentation is shared to all the members.
Yep.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you.